Course 2373, or Programming with Microsoft Visual Basic.net, is a 5-day training class that consists of few modules. I'd like to spend some time and explain all available modules here for you. What do you need to know before you take this training? First, you have to be familiar with Visual Basic language. We assume that you already know a programming language, specifically Visual Basic. You could have any information regarding the VB starting from version 4.0 or 5.0 or even 6.0. That definitely helps us. Also, familiarity with Microsoft.NET strategy. You have to know what .NET can do for you and what area of .NET are you going to work with. So you could elaborate on that section a little bit more. And of course, if you don't, Module 1 would be a good starting point. You could actually see the entire .NET framework and see why do you want to go towards that route, and what is the whole .NET all about, and how can you take advantage of it part of your own projects. Also, the .NET framework, which shows you the entire components of .NET environment. As far as .NET framework, we have a separate 5-day training class for that really gets into the detail of every single one of those components that we are going to explain here a little bit in Chapter 1. As far as the material that we are going to cover in this specific training, we have a variety of different modules. I like to spend some time in here and go and explain every single one of them. We have 11 modules. The first module we are going to discuss .NET Platform. .NET Platform consists of a variety of different sections. The platform provides you an environment in which you can develop, you can design, and you can test your projects and create an internet-aware application. Also, Chapter 2, we get started with development environment features. I spent a little bit of time in there in order to demonstrate the capabilities of Visual Studio.NET, and you can see the areas in which you are going to work with throughout the rest of the course. And of course, in order to understand how to program VB.NET, first you have to understand the tool and environment in which you're using VB.NET. So you have to be familiar with IDE. Module 3 talks about language and syntax enhancement. Just in case if you have some experience regarding VB.NET in the past, or perhaps Visual Basic 6.0, Module 3 talks about the comparison between the older version and also the language itself, which is VB.NET. We are talking about some of the differences as far as the data type goes, some of the new commands, some of the rules and regulations that you have to follow. Basically, VB.NET is not Visual Basic 7.0, is a brand new language. So you have to elaborate on the language itself. So we are going to discuss that on Module 3. Module 4 and 5, they are very related. They are going to discuss object-oriented design for Visual Basic.NET, and then we get started with the programming in OOP. In other words, the first section you have to understand how to design your objects, and then in second section, which is Module 5, you learn how to implement them. Everything goes back to a great design. If you are going to design a component-based program, first you have to understand how to approach and how to choose the base classes. And then, of course, we are going to discuss some of the topics such as inheritance, polymorphisms, abstractions, and encapsulations, and all those terminologies that object-oriented programming has. So we are going to discuss all of them. Module 4 and 5 are tightly coupled and are extremely important for whoever wants to design a object-oriented application. Module 6 talks about Windows Forms, which is a new concept in Visual Basic. Windows Forms provide a rich environment for graphical application design, and of course gives you a capability in order to use the existing tools that Microsoft provides, such as combo boxes, data grids, error handling routines, and many more tools that Microsoft provides part of the Windows Forms. Also, we have some talk regarding web applications and creating web applications for our projects. And of course, we are going to also talk about web forms, which is a new concept again that Microsoft provides, very similar to Windows Form, but you're going to provide those rich UI inside of the web. So you're going to deal with ASPX pages or ASP.NET applications. Perhaps you are going to design an application that gets the data from a database. So you have to understand how to connect to a database, how to retrieve the data, how to manipulate the data. We are going to discuss all of those in Chapter 8 using ADO.NET. If you have programmed with ADO in the past, ADO.NET is very, very similar to it, but there are some enhancements that we are going to discuss that. Also, Chapter 9 talks about developing components in Visual Basic.NET. Well, basically, if you remember, we talked about object-oriented design and object-oriented programming in in Visual Basic.NET in Chapter 4 and 5. Chapter 9 really puts them together and creates a component for you. But not necessarily you're designing your object-oriented design all the time as a component base. You could basically have like an application that is an executable and still have object-oriented design in .NET. But the best practice here is, in order to create a component, which you refer to it as a DLL in the past, and then share that component among all other applications. So take advantage of that. So Chapter 9 and Chapter 4 and 5, they are very, very related. So just wanted to make a note of it in here. So by the time you're taking a note, perhaps, and watching this, you have to understand that they're very, very related to each other. Chapter 10 talks about how to deploy applications. Let's say you have finished with the design, you have finished with the implementation. Now it's time to go and deploy your application from your developer station towards other computers, perhaps. Like, for example, machines that are running your application. Just in case you have a web-based application, you have to put it on a web server. If you have a window-based application, perhaps you want to create a setup program and share that among other end users, and they can go ahead and install their application and perhaps take advantage of your program. There are issues with it, like for example, if you have used some other components, how do you share those components? Maybe you have created a component that all other applications are using it. So what do you do by the time you're going to change the component itself? How do you go about sharing that component with other applications? We are going to discuss all of those. And of course, some of the prerequisites for the machines that need to have your .NET Framework application base installed. And then, of course, in last chapter, we are going to talk about how to upgrade to Visual Basic.NET. Let's say you have a VB applications and you would like to port it into or upgrade it into Visual Basic.NET. We have some talk regarding to that specific information. As I mentioned, this class is a official training, and of course, the demonstration that we are showing makes it a little bit unofficial. Just wanted to let you know that not necessarily we are following the entire Microsoft official curriculum in here. We are covering pretty much everything on it, plus more. If you wanted to get a list of all available Microsoft official training, you can go to the following link, www.microsoft.com, training and services. The link might be changed by the time you're accessing it, so just search for the Microsoft website and look for certified programs.